about the community resolution system. I read this story with an increasing sense of shock. My jaw dropping, as I've written here. Rape a kid, say sorry, get off scot-free. That's basically how this system goes. A record number of sex offenders, including rapists and paedophiles, avoided punishment last year under this extraordinary scheme called community resolution. The police and the Crown Prosecution Service are allowing more and more sex criminals who admit their offences to get away with simply apologising to their victims. In some cases, the settlement can involve also a compensation payment, but the cops only say that these out-of-court deals for sex offences normally require the agreement of the victims. So does that mean, well, that does implicitly mean that some victims don't get a say in this. They get this imposed on them, which isn't justice, if you ask me. Over the past year, Stephen, the sex crimes dealt with by community resolutions included 4 child rapes. Oh, he's sorry about raping that child. Oh, well, that's fair enough then, as long as you apologise. 4 child rapes, 20 grooming offences, 400 sexual assaults and 166 cases of sexual activity with children. In other words, 166 paedophile offences. These are not alleged. These are all admitted. And they are dealt with by a system which allows them to get off scot-free merely by saying sorry to their victims. This is just weird, isn't it?
It's moral degeneracy, but Kev, I'm afraid in the socialist society, they lock up political prisoners and they let the criminals go free because the criminals terrorize the rest of us into a vague sense of compliance. I mean, this is just evil. There's no other way to articulate that. I'd love to see a fellow barrister defend any of this. I really would listen intently, because I just don't see how you formulate an argument to justify this at all. And you know, that's actually an admission of failure, because it used to be my job to defend things, and I would not know how to start with this. It was absolutely outrageous when we started letting people go over paedophilic images. But to have actually touched a child, you know, I think most of us want life for quite a lot of these things. I mean, the rapes, at least, that's definitely, I can have life for that, can't I? I mean, okay, fine. I'm inclined towards very, very, very severe punishments. But maybe I go too far. But I can at least get life for the rapes, surely. And sexual activity with a child, well, that seems 20 years starting point, doesn't it? Yeah. You just don't do this. We cannot be a healthy society where this is permitted.
Exactly. Think about these numbers. Go back to the numbers. Over the past year, the perpetrators of these crimes were allowed to walk scot-free by saying sorry to their victims. These crimes. Let's say it again. 4 child rapes, 20 grooming offences, 400 sexual assaults and 166 paedophile sex offences against children. Now that works out at way over 500. So we're talking about 10, 11, 12 cases a week of paedophilia, of rape, of child sex abuse, grooming offences, where the cops and the CPS allow the perpetrators of these heinous crimes, these sex offences, to go to their victims and say, sorry about that, I'm sorry I raped you, you're a little kid and I shouldn't have done that. And the cops go, well, just let that be a lesson to you. This has got to stop. This is wrong.
This has absolutely got to stop, and I don't understand how a child can even consent to that sort of disposal. You know, in theory, the victim has to give their consent. Isn't that what they said? Well, how on earth can a child give their consent?
Yeah, but the key word in what the cops say about this is that these out-of-court deals normally, I'm using their word, normally require the consent, the agreement of the victims. So that's, you know, I suppose, all right, but normally means that sometimes they don't get a say in whether or not the person who raped them gets convicted. You know, they're just told, you've got to accept this apology and let them walk free. This is a ridiculous system, and you know what it's about? it's about convenience, isn't it? So they can write off, oh, this crime has been settled, we've dealt with this. It's about, you know, the solving statistics and all that. Well, I say that this has to stop. It plays into, in my mind, Stephen, what we learned when Hugh Edwards walked out of court free for his paedophile offences. We learnt then that it's actually pretty much standard procedure, except in very rare circumstances, for all paedophiles on their first offence when they go into court not to be imprisoned. So we have here a very curious national leniency towards heinous sex offences, and I think we need to do something about it.
Yeah, these are the most horrendous offences. Most of us, without any common sense, would consider this to be the most. I don't understand really what the criminal justice system is for, if it's not to punish paedophilia, rape, and murder. Those are the things it should be busying its time with, not mums who tweet. You know, this is really pathetic. We are going to look back upon this stage of our civilization with absolute horror and disgust. There's no other way around it. This is disgusting.
Well, OK, everybody, let me know what you think about this. It's called the Community Resolution Scheme, and this is a scheme by which people who rape children are allowed to get off by saying sorry to their victims. Not only children, just rapists, paedophiles, child sex abusers, grooming gang offenders are allowed to walk free by saying sorry. The cops say, you say sorry, do you agree to that? Oh, that's good, off you go. Isn't that wrong? Don't we need to stop the Community Resolution Scheme? I mean, I suppose it's okay with minor crimes, which is what it was designed for, but they've let it segue into very serious crimes, including an extraordinary number of sex offences. More than 10 every week last year ended up with the perpetrator, the sex offenders, being allowed to walk away free just by saying sorry. That is ridiculous, as Stephen said. That is a sign of a degenerate society that has lost track of its moral backbone. Don't you think? We've got to end this. 0344 499 1000. Next up, well, we're going to get philosophical. We're going to talk about the increasing tendency of people to lose their jobs for their political opinions that have nothing to do with their jobs, but they are sacked because their worldview is not fashionable. We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned. Welcome back. I'm still with a barrister and political commentator Steven Barrett. Steven, this is one for you. Got lots of stories for you tonight, actually. I picked them especially for you, but this one is interesting. A Salvation Army worker, I'm not sure if he was a member of the Salvation Army, called Charles Markey, worked for 20 years at a Dundee hostel run by the Sally Army. He made a joke because they changed the migrant housing policies in Scotland. Scotland takes an inordinate amount of our illegal cross-channel migrants. They changed the policies, and apparently his hostel was inundated, and he was irritated by this. And he said to his colleagues, apparently in a sort of light-hearted way, these refugees should be sent back on an effing boat. In other words, the same way as they came. When a colleague challenged him, asking him if his comment included a Syrian migrant that was currently staying at that Dundee hostel, Markey replied, yes, the lot of them. He said that this was at a tribunal. He said that this was his personal opinion, and he thought that the remarks were light-hearted. And he didn't see what it had to do with his job. Now, the judge rejected Mackey's defence and declared that he had shown complete insensitivity towards those migrants, asylum seekers in the hostel, and that he should have been duty-bound to help, and that, as such, the Salvation Army were right to sack him, that they lawfully... they were within the law to get rid of him. Now, this follows the case, I think it was last week, even more striking case of the 40-year veteran nurse, Roberta Batchelor, in Birmingham, who was sacked, struck off, banned from being a nurse, a job that she'd done with distinction for 4 decades. She was an award-winning nurse. She won a Pride of Birmingham Nursing Award, Pride of Nursing Award in 2015. She was struck off for posting on Facebook her alleged racially motivated reservations about Muslim migrants. She fears that there is a Muslim takeover of this country going on, and she posted some pretty sort of hardline posts on Facebook about her views, cartoons of Arabs running around with knives and things like that. Not a great, not something that I would necessarily approve of or that we would rush to condone. My point is about both these people. Here's a guy who works in this hostel who said something that someone didn't like very much. And again, I don't think it's a very nice thing that he said, send them back on an effing boat. Yeah, the lot of them. But in what way is that relevant to his job? He's done it for 20 years. And even worse, this nurse struck off for her unfashionable opinions, arguably racially motivated opinions. But what have they got to do with her ability to do a job she's clearly done for 40 years with distinction? We are turning into a country where people are being deprived of their livelihoods because of what they think. And I think that's a worrying development.
It is a very worrying development. Clearly, people's personal political opinions ought to be protected. What's happened is we've drifted into a world where there is an acceptable set of political opinions. So if you say that migrants should be deported, Kev, and I'm not saying you did, if let's say a guy called Frank says that migrants should be deported, then Frank is expressing a political opinion. If Frank says migrants are amazing, I wish we had more of them coming, Frank is still expressing a political opinion. Yeah. Yet we both know that one of those political opinions is acceptable and one of them is not. And that's the real perversion going on here. For your listeners and viewers, I should flag that there are really good cases coming out of the employment tribunals where they do actually recognize this and where people are winning compensation against their previous employers because quite rightly their views are protected. If I have anything to say about these two instances, I'd say that this is the inconsistency we're getting from the tribunal system. It's inherently open to abuse, and we see this now. We've had the 4 Women Scotland case. We know that gender critical views, as they might be termed, or sex realist views, are protected in law. We know what a man is and we know what a woman is, yet many employers and public sector employers are defying the law. And I think we're now getting to the point where they're going to face mass lawsuits, like class action lawsuits. But ultimately we need some sort of court of appeal authority or some higher court authority that can simply guide the employment tribunals to say, no, look, these are privately held political opinions. They were expressed in the workplace. Fine. If you want to ban all political opinions, do so, but use that as a future going forward policy and draft it properly and enforce it fairly against all political opinions, not just the unfashionable ones. And I think we'd be a better country when we get to there. But again, Kev, this is part of the nasty little society we are. Yeah. This is where people tittle-tattle on their colleagues in order to get some advantage or just for sheer revenge or the sheer glee of it. That's what these nasty socialist societies were like. People would, Churchill says, the shopkeeper would tattle on his rival to get an advantage, where children would report their own parents. This is not a healthy society, and it's certainly not a Britain I recognise.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So if our nurse friend, Roberta Batchelor, had posted on Facebook, what we need in this country is a lot more Muslims. I'd really like a successful Muslim invasion, a cultural takeover. She would still be doing her job, wouldn't she?
Well, we know that she'd probably be the top priority of the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary, because their top priority has tweeted and put out on that and into the public sphere absolutely outrageous comments, yet he's not touched at all, is he?
Yeah, I just think it's something that we, as you quite rightly suggest, Stephen, we ought to keep an eye on as a society, because this is the thin end of the wedge. If you start saying it's okay to sack people from skilled jobs, for completely irrelevant opinions that they hold. And I'm not saying that you go around and that, you know, if you've got somebody who's a fully fledged Nazi, you know, who wants another Holocaust or something like that, I'm not saying that that kind of person should be looked at very suspiciously. But it strikes me that both Roberta Batchelor and Charles Mackey, whilst their opinions weren't very nice and they didn't express them particularly pleasantly, both of their declarations in terms of their political views were nothing to do with their jobs. It's just that the great and the good, the tribunal, said, oh, well, that's a horrible thing to think. It's quite right that you should lose your job. It's not quite right. It's the opposite of quite right, isn't it?
And it's not applying a legal test. A legal test is simply to say, this is a personally held political opinion, and the tribunal doesn't have to agree with it. It just goes, privately held personal political opinion. You know, are you entitled to it? Yes. Are you entitled to express it? Well, yes, unless absolutely everybody else was denied expression of theirs, in which case you have been unfairly discriminated against and you deserve to win this case. And we just need the tribunal service to get into a much more effective system. I should flag for your listeners and viewers, Kev, that because it's become a bit of a gamble, many of the employers in this situation are preferring to wait it out on the hope that they get a tribunal that just decides for them on some completely spurious ground, and justice in the tribunal system is rather grinding to a halt. It's moving at a ridiculous pace, something like 3 years to get to final hearing.
I'll tell you what I'd like is one of the Roberta Batchelors or the Charles Mackeys of this world, when fired, to hire you to represent them at the tribunal, because I think you'd have a field day, wouldn't you?
Well, as ever, when you appear in front of judges, they have the ultimate power. And if the tribunal is simply decided to be a non-functioning tribunal, you know, that you're not going to get around it, sadly. There is no magic. And remember, they're designed for quick justice. So, and they should deliver quick justice. They're not, but they should deliver quick justice. And then there should be appeals. And we really need an appellate court to step in and just really make it very clear that if an employer allows the expression of any political opinion, and let's be honest, Kev, most of them will, because wearing a rainbow lanyard is a political expression, and most employers allow that to happen. So if you allow any political expression, you have to allow all political expression. It's really very simple. Exactly.
Let's go to break now. When we come back, we'll talk about the shiny new Palestinian Embassy, which opened yesterday in Hammersmith in West London. To my mind, that opens up a can of worms. I mean, what about the security? How much is that going to cost the police to monitor that place? A Palestinian embassy, a high security risk. What about the people who live locally? And what's it all for? I mean, I'm saying that, you know, you take a dodgy country or a high-risk country, it's got every right to have an embassy, and we, the British people, should enshrine that, of course. But Palestine isn't a country, nor is it a state. So why have we given it this potentially dangerous embassy in the heart of West London, where people live and work? Why have we done that? We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Yes, there's a new building over in Hammersmith in West London, a highly populated area. Lots of people work there, lots of people live there. Very nice part of the world, actually. It is the Palestinian Embassy, which opened yesterday. Let's have a little listen to the Palestinian ambassador, Hussam Zomlot, as he hails his new embassy in Hammersmith, London, as a great day for his, quotes, country, close quotes, which it isn't a country, it isn't a state, which is why it's a bit perplexing and bemusing that it has an embassy. But let's have a listen to Mr. Zomlot.
This is a day of hope, a day of steadfastness, and a day that reminds the world that peace is not only possible, it is inevitable, marking a profound milestone in the British-Palestinian relations and in the Palestinian people's long journey to freedom and self-determination, and in the Palestinian people's journey to sovereignty and independence.
The thing is, Stephen, there's several aspects to this. First of all, isn't it kind of weird that we've given an embassy to Palestine when Palestine as a country, as a state, does not exist? What is the point of this? The only result of opening this building I can see will be probably, I don't know this for sure, but an extremely arduous police operation, which will have to go 24/7. This is the Palestine Embassy. This is going to be a high-risk potential terrorist target, obviously. So it's bad for the police, I would have thought. And if I was a local resident, I know where this building is. It's near some very nice houses. I don't think I'd be too thrilled. So old Starmer's virtue signalling, his anti-Israel virtue signalling, has, I think, opened up a bit of a can of worms in West London, don't you think?
Well, it won't be anywhere near where he lives. And it just won't. These things never are. You're right to point out that we should never have recognised or pretended to recognise Palestine as a state. It's not a state. What is and is not a state is determined by a convention in 1933 called the Montevideo Convention, and there are two limbs of that. I won't bore you any further, but there are two limbs of that the Palestine just doesn't meet. So it cannot be a state, and not unless it leaves Gaza behind, in which case it's just the West Bank, which they wouldn't accept. So the whole thing is just a car crash. To be perfectly honest, this thing is a security risk because, we know that Hamas operated out of Venezuela. Hamas and other prescribed terrorist groups, are they going to be given visas? Are they going to be smuggled in? Are we going to be told that they're the cleaner? What are we going to be told? Why on earth anybody thinks this is a good idea is completely off their rockers, save that there is a small portion of our country which has, and it's usually, Kev, other than the fact that a portion of them are far left nutters and a portion of them are just racist against Jews, but the others who fall into this are usually really nice, sweet people who don't pay that much attention to global affairs and just think that the Palestinians are being hard done by and have a really kind heart and therefore want them to do well. And they will have been misled into thinking that this is a good idea. But anybody who pays the slightest bit of attention, even if you're pro a two-state solution, as I am, you can't see this as helpful. It's not helpful. It's gloating. That man didn't move an inch towards peace. He's just gloating that despite committing 7/7, he's got false recognition of his false state. And now he's got a swinging embassy in the heart of London and no doubt funds from somewhere.
Yeah, and, of course, we don't want there to be an incident, any terrorism or attacks on that embassy. But it is a risk. It's clearly a high risk. And you think, well, what the hell was Starmer thinking when he decided to, recognise Palestine if you must? A heinous mistake, if you ask me, but that's what he chose to do. When was it? September the 21st last year. What we didn't realise is this would also entail a whole embassy in Hammersmith. That's a very highly populated area. As I say, you say it's not the sort of place where Keir Starmer would live. It actually sort of is. It's a very nice area with very expensive multi-million pound houses. But
it's not where Lord Ali is, Kev.
That's true. But that isn't the point. The point is, you think, well, why is Starmer endorsing the establishment of a building that is a security risk to the people of this country? What is he thinking?
He's not thinking. He's a completely dead on arrival prime minister. He's dead man walking. He has almost no voters. His actual approval rating is 11%. But the people who disapprove are now at something like 70% of the population disapprove of the prime minister. So he's just groping for anybody who might vaguely want to vote for him. And the Palestinian supporters have said, we might vaguely want to vote for him. They won't. They'll go off to your party and the Green Party. Yeah. But he's just so absolutely desperate at this stage that he's going to ignore. I mean, where are the anti-money laundering rules in all of this? Because how did this non-existent state get any funding when it lives entirely off charitable handouts? Those charitable handouts are made for the people of the West Bank and Gaza to make sure they don't starve, not so that their leaders can buy really swanky houses in nice bits of London. The entire thing is a car crash. It's not thought through, Kevin. I'm pretty sure the Prime Minister basically lives now day to day day, desperately trying to survive until the next dawn.
What would you imagine, again, I'm not an expert on this and you probably aren't either, but what would you imagine that an embassy without a country to represent actually does?
Well, they're not. I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? What did the leaders of Hamas do? You know, some of them planned terrorist atrocities, but most of them spent their time in 5-star plus hotels in Qatar and lounged by the pool, had a bit of a swim, had some cocktails, had some lunch. You know, that was a lovely, lovely life for them. And I imagine, I mean, it's a terribly cushy job, isn't it, to be the Palestinian ambassador?
I was going to say that guy. Mr. Cosmo has landed a good gig, hasn't he?
And he looked very well manicured and very well dressed.
Very pleased with himself, isn't he? Yeah.
I'm sure he has a lovely day. And because there are enough, lefty actors and celebs who wish to put on a keffiyeh and pretend that they know something about world affairs, he's bound to have his lunch and dinner schedule full every week. I mean, the man's just going to live the life of Riley. But the entire thing is just a disgrace to our country. We're not a serious player on the global stage anymore. We're basically now, I mean, he's bent over to anybody who'll take us. You know, we're a joke country. Well, let's quote Shakespeare. We are a country in jest.
There you go. There you go. At least we are a country, which is more than Palestine can say for itself. By the way, just quickly before we go to break, international law. Am I right that basically international law is what big and powerful countries decide is expedient at any given moment? That's pretty much it, isn't it?
No, so there's a real difference, Kev. So I worked and I'm qualified in private international law, and we made our bit work. The public international lawyers went bonkers with power and have basically tried to use it to sort of run the entire world in their own image.
Okay.
That's what's falling apart. It's not international law itself. If it went back to treaties that people could read, and then a nation saying, I agree to be bound by this treaty for now, and then for the period in which it agreed to be bound by that treaty, it was bound, and then when it said, I don't want to be bound by this treaty anymore, it wasn't bound by the treaty anymore, the system would work. And instead, we've got these massive institutions of self-interest like the UN, the ECHR, the EU that just employ the total non-entities in non-jobs, ridiculous payment, immune from prosecution, immune from civil suit, don't pay tax in the resident country. I mean, it's unbelievable the perks and privileges these people get. And so, of course, they want to pretend that international law is more than it is. And my worry... I discussed this with mates over a decade ago, and I said my worry is that they will push the public so far that the public will just say there's no such thing as international law. There is. It's useful in ways. We shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But yes, these people have got well above themselves. And by the way, Kev, nothing Mr. Trump did was illegal.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? There's always an argument. And Keir Starmer. I mean, if you take the basic tenets of what I think international law is all about, it would strike me that Donald Trump and America may have broken international law by just flying into a foreign country and kidnapping the leader. But then again, after that, you can justify it, I think, on international legal grounds. Insofar as Trump will say this was a narco state posing a danger to American citizens. So, you know, it's a game of words to an extent. But I think the thing about international law is people, you know, old Keir Starmer, for example, is like, I'm a great respecter of international law. It's very, very important. You know, they just bandy around this term, international law. And everybody goes, oh, yeah, international law. Has Trump broken international law? Do you know what I go? I go, what the hell exactly is international law? I'm a normal person who lives on planet Earth, and I live in the real world. You lot live in some kind of political bubble, banging on about nebulous concepts that are meaningless to most of us, as in international law.
Yep, and they've been using it to try and spread communism. That's basically what they've been doing.
Yeah.
But just to be clear, on the UN system of international law, this is like operating systems like Android and Apple and Windows. So on the UN version of international law, you have to argue that he's breached Article 2 and that he's impinged the sovereignty of the state. But actually Article 52 allows him to do so if it's in the interests of international security. And so again, and it's because it's fundamentally it's diplomatic.
Yeah.
So it's not as good as legal text should be very clear, very narrow, very precise, very few words. International law, because it's written by diplomats or public international law, it's just waffle.
It is, yeah. It's a malleable, a movable, rancid feast, I would suggest. But you know what's funny about it is you can see that with every fibre of his body, old Keir Starmer, human rights lawyer, wants to say he's broken international law, but he can't because he's too scared to offend the Donald. Hilarious. When we come back, another legal one for you, Steve. We're going to talk about Shamima Begum and her bid to return to Britain, which has been somewhat boosted by our old friends at the European Court of Human Rights. Isn't that special? We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned, folks. Welcome back. Let's talk about Shamima Begum. She's the ISIS bride who in 2015, just over 10 years ago, ran away as a 15-year-old to join the ISIS caliphate, that mad Islamic death cult over in the Middle East. She joined that. She married an ISIS warrior, had 4 kids. They all died. And when the ISIS caliphate fell apart, she ended up in a Syrian desert refugee camp. She lives there to this day. She's been trying to come back, but Sajid Javid, soon after her flight from Britain, took away her British citizenship. He revoked her British citizenship. So we're not letting her back. And we thought that was that. There's been several challenges. She's failed every time. Now, out of nowhere, the European Convention on Human Rights, or the European Court of Human Rights, has demanded to know from the Home Office whether or not we in Britain believe we broke child trafficking and human rights laws when we refused to repatriate this woman. I think Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, said, I'm not having her back here. I think we should just turn around to the ECHR and go, you know, swivel on this, do one. Not answering your question, she's not coming back. What are you going to do about it?
I think we should consider not paying them for this sort of nonsense, to be perfectly honest, Kevin. I mean, a senior KC, who I am rather fond of, pointed out that this entire thing is just not what we consider courts to be. So our court, you will never find our Supreme Court just writing to the government and asking it questions.
Yeah.
Who do you think you are? And this is this very continental idea that a judge is. It's a bit ironic, Kev, because a lot of people like the show Judge John Deed, but he went around doing all sorts of things that a judge never actually does. That's not what judges do.
To solve the cases himself.
Yeah, you don't go and solve the cases. You don't.
I remember that. Yeah.
But that's the continental idea that the judge sort of sticks their beak in and gets involved. And what on earth do they think that they're doing? As far as we're concerned, from our legal tradition, this case is settled. It's been done. Yeah. She's had umpteen appeals. She's had a colossal amount of public money spent upon her. That's it. And if the ECHR really wants to open this, then I think many of us who simply are now fed up to the back teeth of it would probably welcome it, because it really does show why this is a waste of space. This is an office building, quite funky, weird design office building in Strasbourg, full of, and I did a breakdown on my Substack of each of the judges and their backgrounds. Yeah. Almost all of them are just foreign professors. They don't know anything about English law or even about here. Only a couple of them have ever visited. You know, it's just ridiculous. So why you'd let these people be the ultimate arbiters of justice in your country? And particularly this idea that they're just going to keep coming back until they get the answer that they want.
That's exactly it. They just keep on knocking at the door, and we have not given her citizenship back. We have no intention of doing so, and as such, she's not our concern, and she can't come back. So the ECHR, in my view, should be told to get lost. This is ridiculous, but this will carry on because we are seen as some sort of oppressors who treated this poor kid wrongly. If she came back, admitted, to be fair to her, she says she wants to come back and face trial. Well, I'm told that the security bill for this woman, be she in jail, be she in court, be she at home, will be easily more than £1 million a year. She will be a security risk to this country for the rest of her life, and she will cost taxpayers a fortune. for her to be monitored. So she's a terrorist. She's an ISIS sympathiser, and therefore the very notion that we should even think about letting her back in the country is for the birds. It's nonsense.
It does just show how weak we've become. But sadly for Shamima, she will never become the Prime Minister's top priority because she doesn't have access to Twitter. So until she starts tweeting racist things, she'll never be his priority. And it's just a sad truth of the matter that she's yesterday's girl and the Prime Minister's got a new favourite fancy. But the left do have these obsessive tendencies, Kev. It's like the Elgin marbles. You just know they're going to come up again.
Oh,
you just
God.
know it's going to come up again. They will not take no for a no. And that's another one where they have exhausted absolutely every legal angle. There is not a legal argument left to make, and you know it's going to come up again. And this is just part of the left-wing obsessive. I think you should teach your listeners and viewers, if they had given the benefit of the doubt to the European Court of Human Rights, they should take it away. It's just another lefty obsessive institution, and it just wants to hurt our country. I mean, that's all they want to do, these people. If you defend it, it might say, well, they're not lefty, they're just compromised by foreign powers who hate us. And that's the other risk of having a foreign court where you don't know who the judges are and you don't get a say in who they are.
It's a very strong argument for us leaving the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights. Get your nose out of our business and let's make it official that you can't stick your nose into our business. But this is indicative of our problems with this foreign court. It is, in the end, legally the sovereign ruler of this country. You can take most grievances to Strasbourg. If every court in the British land rejects your case, head off to Strasbourg, and if it's anti-British, the chances are they'll rule in your favour, right?
Yeah, and it just shows that actually these are fundamentally political questions. You really don't want them to be made by judges. I mean, look, I don't like the pretend court in Strasbourg, but I wouldn't even want these decisions made by our judges. It just cheapens judges. These are political questions and they should be made by politicians. If there's ever a government that wanted to bring Shamima Begum back, they should be allowed to do so, but then they should face public opprobrium and outcry for so doing. One of the problems with making this some sort of foreign court said it's the law is that people don't feel the right to kick off in the streets and complain, but they have every right to kick off and complain. This is just not on, and that's why even Shabana Mahmood realizes that you can't bring Shamima Begum back. It's the ECHR. If the ECHR is stupid enough to do this, good, because then everybody will want to leave it.
Yeah, Shabana Mahmood, as the Home Secretary, said the right kind of things. No way, and she's not coming back as far as I'm concerned, which is fine, which is good. I'm glad Shabana's saying that, but I think she should go stronger. I think she should say to the ECHR, how dare you? What has this got to do with you? Go away.
I think Shabana Mahmood's more than happy to say anything, Kev, just like when she fixed illegal immigration and the boats.
Oh,
do you
yeah,
remember
that was
yeah,
good.
Do you remember that? Because she was really tough on that. Do you remember? It was
migrant crisis seems like such a long time ago since she solved it last month, doesn't it? I
know, we don't even remember it anymore. It's just, and that's all they've got. But even they know that even if she secretly supports Shamima Begum, as I suspect a lot on the left do.
Yeah, I agree with that.
A lot of them have got the brains to not say it out loud. They don't say the quiet bit out loud, do they?
That's it. You suspect that our Prime Minister is probably rather keen on Shamima Mahmood coming back. Shamima Begum coming back. But as you say,
trade them with the Elgin marbles.
I'll tell you what, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? Listen, Stephen, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Good to hook up again after the festivities, and we'll be back with you next Tuesday. Steven Barrett, the lawyer and barrister, our Tuesday friend. Always good stuff with him.